Master Reddit. Subscribe for more videos.
Hundreds of years ago during the Crusades, a soldier's diary described the image of a mysterious burning cross floating in the sky. Make sure to watch to the end to find out what it may have been. Reddit, what is the most mind-boggling fact you know? Despite what you see on the news, we are actually living in the safest time in all of human history. Life pro tip: if you stop watching the news you realize how 99% of that stuff doesn't affect you. There are roughly 200 corpses on Mount Everest that are used as waypoints for climbers. Take a left at Mr. Bones. I want to get off Mr. Bones' wild hike. Wouldn't they decompose at some point? Or do more people just die to replace them? Edit: multiple people have responded saying it's cold. I should have figured that one out on my own. Thanks guys. Fun fact, the world's oldest fully preserved body was found in the Ötztaler Alps. Radiocarbon dating places him at approximately 3300 BC. Because he was fully preserved, we know a lot about him, including that he had gum disease, no wisdom teeth, that his lungs were blacked from smoke, probably from sitting near fires, he'd been a vegetarian for the last months of his life, had frostbite on one toe, had many tattoos, etc. It's incredible. To those of you wondering about the diet, I'm not sure why his diet is referred to as vegetarian when his last meal clearly included meat. Possibly refers to the lack of meat before this, though I've now seen two sources calling his diet vegetarian and then immediately stating that he'd eaten meat. I honestly don't know what to tell you. He'd been a vegetarian for the last months of his life. In other words, starving. And like a true vegetarian, even in death he's made everyone know about it. I remember reading about it. There are different corpses throughout the different decades, so they are dressed vastly different but are all frozen in time. There are plenty from the 80s dressed in neon colors, and there is an area called Rainbow Valley due to all of the colorful corpses. So bizarre, that alone would be intimidating enough when trying to climb it. That France was still executing by guillotine during the first Star Wars movie. They could have at least let the condemned see how the movie ended. Any last wishes? Yeah, I want to watch the end of the movie. Should have said the end of the series. Midway through Phantom Menace. Okay, you can kill me now. No, you have to finish watchin' Kill Me. That in World War II, an American airman by the name of Alan McGee survived a free fall from 22,000 feet without a parachute and becoming a prisoner of war for 2 years. In 1943 he was in a B-17 making a bombing run over France when plane's wing was shot off by German fighters. As the plane entered a spin he leapt out without a parachute and immediately lost consciousness from the altitude. After falling 4 miles he crashed through the glass ceiling of the Saint-Nazaire railroad station and onto the floor below, where he was captured as a prisoner of war. He suffered almost 30 shrapnel wounds, several broken bones, severe damage to his nose, eyes, lungs, kidneys, and his right arm was nearly severed off. His captors treated him back to health. He was liberated in 1945 and awarded an Air Medal and a Purple Heart. Imagine being a prisoner of war for 2 years after surviving that. Guys, I fell out of a bomber at 22,000 feet and I'm alive. Can you just let me go please? Yeah, I've been turned into a cow, can I go home? Isma: okay, you can go home. Anyone else? No, we're good. That's fucking crazy. Emo, you win the thread. 22,000 feet with no parachute and a glass ceiling broke his fall. This is mind-boggling. Keep in mind that even though he fell 22,000 feet, the forces in play would be no worse than 2,000 feet due to terminal velocity. Did you just assume that man's surface area relative to his direction of travel? Olympus Mons on Mars, the tallest known mountain in the Solar System, is so large at its base that an observer on its peak wouldn't know he was standing on a mountain because its slope would be obscured by the curvature of the planet itself. Edit: thanks for the gold kind Reddit stranger. It's so tall that it has 5-mile-high sheer cliffs at its base. Imagine looking at a solid wall that's roughly the height of Mount Everest. And that's just at the bottom. It gives me shivers up my spine thinking about that. We need to colonize Mars just so we can watch somebody climb it. To visualize it another way, its base is as big as the state of Arizona, and the peak practically sticks into space, so it's like a space nipple? Finally somebody explains it in terms I can grasp. Enough of all this science mumbo-jumbo. The most successful sniper in the history of Western civilization was likely Simo Häyhä, of Finland. During the Winter War of 1939–1940, when the Russians invaded, Heha set himself up in a tree, in below freezing temperatures -4 degrees Fahrenheit to -40 degrees Fahrenheit, armed with only 2 weapons, possibly AM-28-30 rifle and a Suomi KP-31 submachine gun. And then he started killing Russians. Lots and lots of Russians. Edit, just learned that on one particular day, Heha recorded 25 kills. When the Russians realized that this one sniper was picking them off, they set counter-snipers to kill him. Heha killed them all. So the Russians sent artillery strikes and those didn't work either. After killing an average of 5 Russians a day for over 3 months, Heha was finally stopped when a Russian soldier that he shot and killed at the same time managed to get off a shot with an explosive bullet that struck him in the jaw. At the end of his career, Heha had 505 confirmed kills, and is estimated to have killed at least 300 more soldiers. Oh, and that explosive bullet didn't actually kill him. Heha survived and later became a successful dog breeder and moose hunter. Let's also make this clear, when we say sniper you're probably thinking there was a scope or something on his rifle. Nope. He did this with iron sights. Yeah, Heha realized that in winter, his breath could fog up the regular scope. And the sun reflection would be more obvious. He also ate snow while shooting to hide his own breath. This is the coolest part of the story. The fact that he was willing to sacrifice a scope. The longest piece of literature, in the English language, is 3.5 million words long and counting, is written by a 21-year-old guy in Arizona, and is a fan fiction of Super Smash Bros. Brawl Edit. Apparently, now it has over 4 million words. It started in I think 2006? Whenever the very first trailer of Brawl came out. Still being written today. Over 10 years. But why? He mentioned in an interview that he was bad at English and he started writing to teach himself. He must be fucking Shakespeare by now. Necrophilia is never the answer. The swimming pool on board the Titanic is still full. Edit, well holy crap. My first gold and on a dad joke as well. Thanks kind stranger. The placebo effect can still happen when you know you're taking a placebo, if you believe that placebo effect is some kind of a magical phenomena that will happen no matter what, it will happen no matter what. So in a way you experience placebo. When I was young a friend told me that thinking of elephants stopped you from sneezing. I believed him, and 10 years later I am still avoiding sneezing by thinking of elephants. He was clearly lying, because this doesn't work for anyone but me. But even with the knowledge it's complete BS, it works. Truly amazing. If anything it makes me kind of sad that everyone I tell it to doesn't truly believe me. Sad face. There are more atoms in a teaspoon of water than there are teaspoons of water in the Atlantic. Similarly, there are more molecules of air in one breath than there are breaths in the atmosphere. That means that every breath you take probably contains at least one molecule of Newton's last breath. Giraffes and humans possess the same amount of neck bones, the same. Edit, the next person to suggest I use number in place of amount gets a shiny sticker. So it's easier to break a giraffe's neck. This goes great with my plan. In the mid-1880s aluminum was more valuable than gold, now we use it expendably to wrap food. Fun side fact, it was used to cap the top of the Washington Monument due to its initial value at the time. Also it is immune to the effects of allomancy. The 15 largest ships create more pollution than every car on the planet combined. Crocodiles are essentially immortal, and die not through old age, but because they become so large that feeding themselves sufficiently becomes too momentous a task and they starve to death. I had a pet dwarf crocodile once. We had to give it to a local reptile sanctuary because my dad taught him how to use his tail to jump for food and he was able to jump out of the tank. T-Rexes lived closer to a live Miley Cyrus concert than they did to a Stegosaurus. T-Rexes lived closer to toy Stegosauruses than actual Stegosauruses. This was the one I came here to say. The Stegosaurus lived about 150 million years ago in the late Jurassic period, the T-Rex lived about 65 million years ago in the late Cretaceous period. T-Rex is about 20 million years closer to us than it is to the Stegosaurus, that's a lot of years. Male Irish mummies are often found with nipple mutilations, leading many experts to believe Irish leaders may have worn nipple rings, as kissing a king's nipple was believed to be a sign of respect. They're called daddies. You bastard. That humans almost went extinct 75,000 years ago. Total population dropped to around 15,000, destroying much of our genetic diversity. Why did this happen? I need answers. There was a Cosmos episode on it. Something to do with tons of volcanic activity. Eels actually have two jaws. The first being like a normal jaw, the second being hidden in their throat. The secondary jaw lunges forward when the eel bites down on prey, bites down on the piece within the mouth and bites a chunk out of it, pulling it down the throat. Think about the alien in the movie Alien. The secondary mini-mouth they use is based off an eel's anatomy. When the jaws open wide, and there's more jaws inside, that's a moray. When it looks like the snake, but it lives in the lake, that's a moray. Senator Daniel Inouye literally lived out every overdone action movie trope. Inouye was promoted to sergeant within his first year, and he was assigned as a platoon sergeant. He served in Italy in 1944 during the Rome-Arno campaign before his regiment was transferred to the Vosges Mountains region of France, where he spent 2 weeks in the battle to relieve the Lost Battalion, a battalion of the 141st Infantry Regiment that was surrounded by German forces. He was promoted to second lieutenant for his actions there. At one point while he was leading an attack, a shot struck him in the chest directly above his heart, but the bullet was stopped by the $2 silver he happened to have stacked in his shirt pocket. He continued to carry the coins throughout the war in his shirt pocket as good luck charms, until he lost them shortly before the battle in which he lost his arm. On April 21, 1945, Inouye was grievously wounded while leading an assault on a heavily defended ridge near San Terenzo in Tuscany, Italy, called the Col Musatello. The ridge served as a strongpoint of the German fortifications known as the Gothic Line, the last and most unyielding line of German defensive works in Italy. As he led his platoon in a flanking maneuver, 3 German machine guns opened fire from covered positions 40 yards away, pinning his men to the ground. Inouye stood up to attack and was shot in the stomach. Ignoring his wound, he proceeded to attack and destroy the first machine gun nest with hand grenades and his Thompson submachine gun. When informed of the severity of his wound, he refused treatment and rallied his men for an attack on the second machine gun position, which he successfully destroyed before collapsing from blood loss. As his squad distracted the third machine gunner, Inouye crawled toward the final bunker, coming within 10 yards. As he raised himself up and cocked his arm to throw his last grenade, a German soldier inside the bunker fired a rifle grenade, which struck his right elbow, nearly severing most of his arm and leaving his primed grenade reflexively clenched in a fist that suddenly didn't belong to me anymore. Inouye's horrified soldiers moved to his aid, but he shouted for them to keep back out of fear his severed fist would involuntarily relax and drop the grenade. While the German inside the bunker reloaded his rifle, Inouye pried the live grenade from his useless right hand and transferred it to his left. As the enemy soldier aimed his rifle at him, Inouye tossed the grenade into the bunker and destroyed it. He stumbled to his feet and continued forward, silencing the last German resistance with a one-handed burst from his Thompson before being wounded in the leg and tumbling unconscious to the bottom of the ridge. He awoke to see the worried men of his platoon hovering over him. His only comment before being carried away was to order them back to their positions, saying, "Nobody called off the war." The remainder of Inouye's mutilated right arm was later amputated at a field hospital without proper anesthesia, as he had been given too much morphine at an aid station and it was feared any more would lower his blood pressure enough to kill him. This all from a first-generation Japanese American that enlisted into a segregated division only after the U.S. lifted the ban on the Japanese serving in the military. Cicadas live underground for several years and emerge only to reproduce. The number of years they take to come above ground is mostly a prime number. Each species has its own prime number of years they stay underground. The reason to be a prime number is that it reduces drastically the chance of 2 different species meeting above ground in the same year and crossbreed, weakening the genes of both species. As several people pointed out, crossbreeding might be actually good for the evolution on the long run. However, each species is already refining their genes for ages. If they crossbreed, they have to start over the whole process. Another reason for the weird reproduction cycle is avoiding predators and competition among species, according to some replies. Just a few years ago in Kansas, we had a 17-year species and a 13-year come out at the same time. The noise was tremendous at night. My Bill from Oregon came to visit and the sound scared the shit out of him. No one ant knows how an ant colony works, yet an ant colony emerges from many ants. Each single ant is following its basics, impulses and reflexes based on its immediate surroundings, and yet the colony can react to intruders, build more tunnels, and gather food as if it were one large entity. It's a commonly known fact, but I think it's pretty mind-boggling when you think about it. Edit. What's even more mind-boggling is if you use this to think about your brain. Your neurons are the ants and your brain is the ant colony. Each neuron can receive electrical input from any number of other neurons firing. If the amount of input crosses a threshold unique to each neuron, it itself fires. This electrical impulse then travels to any number of other neurons, and the same process occurs in each of them. This is how your brain works. From this simple process emerges complex thought. You are not the neurons in your brain, you are the extremely complex colony of neurons that emerges. Each neuron is utterly meaningless, but from this meaninglessness forms meaning, all the amazing things your brain can do. Edit 2. For further reading I recommend Gödel Escher Bach, An Eternal Golden Braid, Chapter 11, by Douglas Hofstadter, and the preceding section, Ant Fugue. The fact that recently a group of scientists went to investigate a forest of trees that were able to live for thousands of years on their own, and ended up finding traces of massive radiation in the very early rings of the trunks. All of them had this in the same spots. Around the same time, judging by the average age of the trees and the rings the radiation was located in, there was a battle involving the Crusaders, Deus Vult by the way, and one of the soldiers' uncovered diaries had described seeing the image of the cross burning like fire in the sky, which had given them extra morale, and then they won the battle. So, using logic, you can guess that this cross in the sky was what caused the radiation. And I can hear you thinking, how in the fuck? Well, I can proudly tell you that literally no one knows. The random events, the accidents, and the conscious decisions that took place just to get me here. I just think of my own life and how I would have a totally different wife and kids if my dad didn't take XX job in XX city, or if my parents didn't get divorced, or of course me not even being here at all if they didn't have sex that night I was conceived, etc. What if mom had a headache that night or dad said something wrong at dinner? Or what if he did and it was the makeup sex that really got me here? Then multiply all those possibilities times each preceding generation and thousands of years of ancestry and humanity. Shit, each one of us is a miracle resulting from a combination of events whose odds I can't even fathom. I met my now girlfriend 17 years ago, in a bar, in a city, nowhere near where either of us were born, in a video game, by random chance. Had I not signed on that day, or at that time, we could have never met. She only bought the video game because she was trying it at a friend's house and met this funny guy in a bar. She happened to have the foresight to write down my character's name, keep that scrap of paper, and remember to look me up when she bought it a month or so later. She was only 11, I was 15. We became and stayed friends, never met in real life, had different boyfriends and girlfriends over the years. I got married, had kids. She got engaged. We only ever said hi on holidays or birthdays on Facebook. I got divorced, was sad and alone, and saw a picture she posted on Facebook of her looking so grown up. I always just thought of her as a kid. So I commented and said how grown up she was. She messaged me and I found out her engagement was off. We started talking. I drove 1,400 miles to finally meet her in real life, and then she moved 1,400 miles to be with me. Here we are 2.5 years later, and my life has never been more complete. The universe is fucking crazy. To think a little game called EverQuest would impact my life so drastically 17 years later. Edit. People are getting confused, I'm sure it's because of the way I told it. The bar was in the game, EverQuest. In a town called Freeport. I was sitting there camping a bard who gave me easy EXP. This low-level half-elf walked in and wanted to know why I was doing it. I told her it was fun and an easy way for me to level up. That's how we met in a bar at such a young age. If you enjoyed the video, leave me a comment. Like and subscribe if you want to master Reddit.